by Walter Chandoha. For Enrico, who likes cats as much as they like him. Introduction. As a professional photographer specializing in fauna and flora, I am often asked what animal is my favorite. The big cats of Africa, probably. But since I've spent so little time with them and so much time with the domestic variety, my perennial favorite is the cat in our homes and on our farms. Of all domestic animals, the cat is the most expressive. His face is capable of showing a wide range of expressions. His tail is a mirror of his mind. His gracefulness is surpassed only by his agility. And, along with all these, he has a sense of humor. These are some of the qualities that make the cat an ideal camera subject. With my photographs, I have attempted to show some of the many facets of the cat. Some years ago, when I was completing my second cat book, I felt that at last I had photographed the cat in every conceivable pose, posture, and situation, and there was nothing more to do. How wrong I was. Now, some 60,000 cat photographs and a half-dozen cat books later, I know I'll never be able to completely document the cat. He's too complex a critter, but I'll keep trying. In studying and photographing cats for over 30 years, I have acquired two of their more admirable traits: tenacity and persistence. Mad Anthony. The tall weeds of September remind me of Mad Anthony, who people said was a little crazy. They were wrong. Mad Anthony was my cat, and I knew he was a lot crazy. Mad Anthony liked high grass and watering cans, and he liked playing dog. On a day like this, I would whistle up Mad Anthony, and he would climb out of his watering can where he sat and thought about being a dog. He would trot up to me and wag his tail. Then we'd go for a walk, just a boy and his little furry dog along a country road. We would stop to look at butterflies and bugs and birds. Mad Anthony would heel. Sometimes he would point, but once in a while he'd get excited, forget he was playing dog, and revert to his natural role of insane cat. He would spring. Mad Anthony was the only cat I knew who sprang straight up. He never leaped toward a butterfly, bug, or bird. He rose vertically, at least 2 feet, often 3. Whether there was wildlife nearby or not, there was no warning, and the effect was startling. When Mad Anthony sprang, it was as if he'd been standing on a landmine or over one of those off on Yellowstone geysers. All of a sudden, boing. People were amazed. They asked me why my cat leapt up like that way for no reason. I told them he was a very special cat. Privately, I thought it was because he was nuts. But I didn't say that because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. We were good friends. We played a game in the tall grass. Mad Anthony scurried into the field and hid, but not too well. He twitched his tail so I could see weeds moving. Then I ran into the field, straight at him. Boing! Mad Anthony rocketed up, legs outstretched, mouth wide open, a wild gleam in his slanty eyes. I caught him in my arms. He always pretended to be surprised. He yelled, "Meow!" a couple of times. Then he struggled to get down so he could run off and do it over again. The game could take up most of the day. My mother would ask me where I'd been, and I'd say, catching the cat. Mad Anthony lived in the watering can. We left it out all winter for him. He spent an awful lot of time in there. I wondered what he found to do. My parents said he was probably redecorating. Early in the morning, I would tiptoe out of the house and try to sneak up on Mad Anthony. But he always heard me. His head would pop up under the watering can handle, and he'd squint into the sunshine. His triangular face reminded me of Submariner, a comic book hero then. My family didn't use Mad Anthony's watering can. We bought another one to water the garden with. But one time somebody got mixed up and put water in Mad Anthony's house while he was out boinging around somewhere. He came dashing across the lawn and leapt into the can. There was a terrible splash and a long pause. Then the Submariner's dripping head appeared in the opening. His eyes were more squinty than usual. But he didn't say anything. He just looked casually around, pretending he wasn't up to his neck in water. He stayed in there for a long while, just to make his point. Like I said, he was crazy. I wish he were still around. Now, a lot of years later, I still think of Mad Anthony when I see tall grass or a watering can. But I never see a cat face peeking out. If I did, I guess I'd spring straight in the air. Derek Williamson. How to get a cat out of a tree. Some people say that cats get hungry up a tree and that food will often lure the wanderers back to earth. Others maintain that water played on them from above, sometimes quite impossible, will force them down. It has worked with some cats, but all cats? I'm not so sure. Why does the cat go up anyway? Curiosity? Birds? Of course. But there are other reasons, and they remain inexplicable. Does Puss decide to make the trek because it's there? It has been fairly well determined that many cats find some kind of security in high places, perhaps because they are safely out of reach of creatures like dogs. Whatever the reason, cats will go on climbing, as they've been doing these many centuries. And some humans will go on sounding alarms while others of us will insist that the alarms are ridiculous and that the cat will eventually come down. Jean Burden. Mysterious kind of folk. Cats are a mysterious kind of folk. There is more passing in their minds than we are aware of. Sir Walter Scott. The Roaming Cat. State of Illinois Executive Department, Springfield, April 23, 1949. To the Honorable, the members of the Senate of the 66th General Assembly. I herewith return, without my approval, Senate Bill No. 93, entitled, An Act to Provide Protection to Insectivorous Birds by Restraining Cats. This is the so-called Cat Bill. I veto and withhold my approval from this bill for the following reasons. It would impose fines on owners or keepers who permitted their cats to run at large off their premises. It would permit any person to capture or call upon the police to pick up and imprison cats at large. This legislation has been introduced in the past several sessions of the legislature, and it has, over the years, been the source of much comment, not all of which has been in a serious vein. I cannot believe there is a widespread public demand for this law, or that it could, as a practical matter, be enforced. Furthermore, I cannot agree that it should be the declared public policy of Illinois that a cat visiting a neighbor's yard or crossing the highway is a public nuisance. It is in the nature of cats to do a certain amount of unescorted roaming. Also consider the owner's dilemma. To escort a cat abroad on a leash is against the nature of the cat, and to permit it to venture forth for exercise unattended into a night of new dangers is against the nature of the owner. Moreover, cats perform useful service, particularly in rural areas, in combating rodents, work they necessarily perform alone and without regard for property lines. The problem of cat versus bird is as old as time. If we attempt to resolve it by legislation, who knows but what we may be called upon to take sides as well in the age-old problem of dog versus cat, bird versus bird, or even bird versus worm. In my opinion, the state of Illinois and its local governing bodies already have enough to do without trying to control feline delinquency. For these reasons, and not because I love birds the less or cats the more, I veto and withhold my approval from Senate Bill number 93. Respectfully, Adlai E. Stevenson, Governor. The Ninth Life. She could see the twinkling lights of the town across the bay when her pain came on. It was so piercing, so sudden, that she turned with a savage cry to face what seemed to be attacking her in the rear. But then she knew that the pain was inside her. She lay writhing on the ground and before long gave birth to a kitten. She began to lick it, then realized that it was dead. She ran on toward the town as fast as she could. She was still 2 miles from it when she had 2 more kittens. She lay beside them for a while, feeling weak and peaceful. Now the lights of the town were out. Harriet picked up one of the kittens and limped on. With it in her mouth, she went along the paved street. She gave a meow of delight as she reached the back door of her own home. She laid the kitten on the doorstep and herself began limping back and forth the length of the step, rubbing her sides against the door. For the first time since she had been left on the island, she purred. The purr bubbled in her throat, vibrating through her nerves in an ecstasy of homecoming. She caressed the back door with every bit of her. She stood on her hind legs and caressed the door handle with a loving paw. Only the weak cry of her kitten made her desist. She carried it to the tool shed and laid it on the mat where the terrier slept in warm weather. She laid herself down beside it, trilling to it in love. It buried its sightless face against her lank belly. She lay flat on her side, weary to the bone. Marzo de la Roche. Jennie's lessons to Peter on how to behave like a cat. Jennie, why when you are pleased and happy and relaxed do your claws work in and out in that queer way? Once back home, when we lived in the warehouse, I noticed that you were moving your paws up and down, almost as though you were making the bed. I never do that, though I do purr when I am happy. Jennie was lying on her side on the canvas hatch cover when Peter asked that question, and she raised her head and gave him a most tender glance before she replied, "I know, Peter, and it is just another of those things that tell me that in spite of your shape and form, you are really human, and perhaps always will be. But maybe I can explain it to you. Peter, say something sweet to me." The only thing Peter could think of to say was, "Oh, Jennie, I wish that I could be all cat, so that I might be more like you." The most beatific smile stole over Jennie's face. Her throat throbbed with purring, and slowly her white paws began to work, the claws moving in and out as though she were kneading dough. "You see," she said to Peter, "it has to do with feeling happy. It goes all the way back to our being kittens and being nursed by our mothers. We cannot even see at first, but only feel, for when we are first born we are blind, and our eyes open only after a few weeks. But we can feel our way to our mother's breast and bury ourselves in her soft, sweet-smelling fur to find her milk. And when we are there, we work our paws gently up and down to help the food we want so much to flow more freely. Then, when it does, we feel it in our throats, warm and satisfying. It stops our hunger and our thirst. It soothes our fears and desires. And, oh Peter, we are so blissful and contented at that moment, so secure and peaceful and, well, just happy. We never forget those moments with our mothers. They remain with us all the rest of our lives. And later on, long after we are grown, when something makes us very happy, our paws and claws go in and out the same way, in memory of those early times of our first real happiness. And that is all I can tell you about it. Paul Gallico, The Abandoned.